A Hunt County father shot and stabbed 9 times in his own home. His wife shot repeatedly. The person jailed for their murders, their son. 17 years later, the question looms larger than ever. Is Brandon Woodruff innocent? It's the focus of this week's 2020, and ABC's John Quiones joins us with a preview. Good morning, John.
Good morning, Shara. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. First, I want you to remind us a bit about this case. What
This is
evidence
a
actually sent
fascinating
Brandon
case.
to jail?
Well, this all happened, as you mentioned, 16 years ago. A middle-aged couple in Roy City, Dennis and Norma Woodruff, they're at home having dinner with their son when suddenly they're never seen again. 2 days after that dinner, they're found brutally murdered. And it's not long before their son, 18-year-old Brandon Woodruff, who happens to be gay, is accused of the crime. Authorities say he lived a double life, and they recovered this weapon, an old dagger, that had his father's DNA on it. Police say it belonged to Brandon and that he used it to kill his parents. Now, Brandon claims he did not do this, that the blood on that dagger was from when his father cut himself on it years before. And really, in the end, there is no other physical evidence. Nonetheless, it isn't long before a jury convicts Brandon of these double murders. He's sentenced to life in prison without parole, and now Brandon is pleading for an appeal.
Brandon hasn't done a TV interview since his conviction in 2009 until now. What did he tell you?
Well, through tears, he's been in prison now 16 years. He tells me that he loved his parents, that he did not commit this crime. And he claims that the authorities focused on him in large part because of his sexual orientation. Remember, this happened in a small conservative town 18 years ago. He's desperate for an appeal. He wants to clear his name. And the Innocence Project of Texas, whose mission is to overturn wrongful convictions, they're seriously looking at this case. But Shara, the sad thing about it is how this whole thing has torn apart the Woodruff family. Brandon's only sister is convinced that he committed this murder, convinced of his guilt. And yet their grandmother stands right by Brandon, maintaining he's innocent, paying for his legal fees, and she's doing everything she can to get Brandon freed from prison.
And you mentioned the Innocence Project. What are they saying about this case? Because it means a lot for them to get involved in it.
They're studying it. They haven't decided yet whether they're going to do anything about it, but they're leaning close to indeed taking it on and trying to get it appealed and somehow overturned. There's a big movement. He has his share of supporters now who are convinced that the reason he was arrested and convicted in large part, again, was simply because he's gay.
What's your take? Could Brandon go free?
We don't know. It depends on whether the Innocence Project takes it on. We haven't heard for certain whether they will file for an appeal. If they do, it'll be an interesting case. Again, he's already served 16 years. He's there without any possibility of parole. He has to get an appeal, otherwise he'll spend the rest of his life there.
All right, John Quiones, thank you so much for joining us here with ABC Dallas on Midday. We appreciate you. Have a good rest of your day. Well, did a son kill his parents in their North Texas home? You can see this true crime edition of 2020 featuring the first TV interview with Brandon Woodruff this Friday at 8 o'clock here on WFAA, followed by our news at 10.